Hello and welcome to Sleepsmyth, your peaceful place to unwind, dream, and drift gently into sleep. Before we start our story tonight, let me help you settle in with a simple, calming breath like a gentle lullaby for your body and mind. So, find a cozy spot, maybe snuggle under your blanket, and softly close your eyes. Now, breathing quietly through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath softly for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now, slowly exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds, letting all the tension melt away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do that again. Nice and easy. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One last time, just like a soft whisper. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Feel your body getting lighter, your mind quiet, as if you're being tucked gently into a calm, warm bed. Thank you for sharing this moment with Sleepsmyth. Now, relax completely and let the story carry you into a peaceful, restful sleep. Let's begin.
As twilight whispers softly around you, let us journey together through the delicate folds of history and mystery. Tonight, we will meet 3 princesses, bound by crowns, yet broken by secrets. Their stories are woven with beauty and loss, with courage and silence, and the quiet echo of legends whispered through time. First, we follow Grand Duchess Anastasia Romanov, the youngest daughter of Russia's last imperial family, whose fate vanished in a storm of revolution and rumor. Then, we sail across the Pacific to the islands of Hawaiʻi, where Princess Kaʻiolani stood bravely between her people and a changing world, her light flickering too soon beneath the shadows of empire. Finally, we cross the snow-dusted peaks of the Alps to Empress Elisabeth of Austria, a woman who fled her gilded cage and vanished into myth. These are not just stories of royalty, but of longing, loss, and the fragile beauty of a life that refuses to be forgotten. So, close your eyes gently, and let the soft breath of these lost princesses carry you through the twilight of their tales and into the quiet realm of dreams. Grand Duchess Anastasia Romanov, the secret light of the Romanov. Shadows over a winter palace, in the heart of a vast and frozen land, where snow fell like soft whispers from the gray sky, there stood a palace cloaked in cold and quiet. The Winter Palace, a place where emperors once ruled and empresses dreamed, was now a fading echo of a world slipping away. Inside its grand halls, young Anastasia moved with careful steps, the soft rustle of her gown barely breaking the stillness. She was a girl of 16 winters, her golden hair like strands of sunlight caught in the frost, her eyes deep pools reflecting both innocence and a growing awareness of the world's shadows. Her laughter, once bright as spring water, had begun to soften, like the gentle sigh of wind through bare branches, though the weight of the empire pressed upon her family. Anastasia clung to the fragile glow of childhood dreams. She would often sit by the frosted window, watching the snowflakes dance slowly to the earth, imagining each one a tiny miracle, a secret message from a world untouched by sorrow. The palace, with its walls heavy with history, whispered stories of past glories and lost hopes, and in that silence, the girl's heart beat fiercely. She dreamed of a place beyond the cold, a place where light might bloom once again. But the storm gathering outside was unlike any she had known. It was a storm that threatened to swallow the sun. The fall of an empire. The year was 1917, and the winds of revolution swept across Russia like a fierce winter gale. The people's voices rose in anger, calling for justice, for change, for an end to centuries of rule by a family now seen as distant and broken. Inside the palace, the Romanovs faced a reality they could not escape. Anastasia's days grew shorter, her world smaller, the grandeur replaced by a sense of imprisonment. She found comfort in the quiet moments with her siblings, in the secret games they played to forget the cold and the fear. She and her brothers and sisters shared whispered stories by candlelight, tales of faraway places where the sky was always blue and the flowers never faded. Her mother, the Empress Alexandra, tried to shield them with love and courage, but even she could not hide the growing shadow that stretched across their lives. The family was moved to a small plain house in Ekaterinburg, far from the gilded halls of St. Petersburg. The cold bit deeper there, and the walls seemed to close in tighter. Anastasia sat often by the window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the snow fall endlessly. Each flake was a silent prayer, a wish to hold on to hope, to find a light in the endless gray. But as the days passed, that light grew fainter, and the future seemed swallowed by the darkness closing around them. The final night. On a night wrapped in a thick, suffocating silence, the family was roused from uneasy sleep. They were told to gather quickly, to leave the house and face the unknown. In the dim light of a basement room, the air was thick with fear, with the unspoken understanding of what was to come. Anastasia held her mother's hand tightly, her small fingers trembling, her heart pounding like a bird trapped in a cage. The hours stretched endlessly, filled only with whispered prayers and muffled sobs. Then the quiet shattered, gunshots ripped through the darkness. In that terrible moment, time seemed to fracture, lives ended, and a world crumbled into dust. When the night finally surrendered to dawn, the room was empty. save for silence and shadows. Yet some say that somewhere in the darkness, a light flickered, a secret spark of life. Whispers of survival. In the years that followed, rumors swirled like drifting snow. Tales of a princess who had escaped death, who walked the earth in secret. The name Anastasia became a symbol of hope for those who refused to believe the end was absolute. Among the many who claimed to be the lost princess, one woman stood out, Anna Anderson. She came forward with stories only Anastasia could have known, memories of childhood games, secret hiding places, the faces of family long gone. Some believed her, others doubted, but her claim sparked a fire of fascination that would burn for decades. Anna lived a life caught between truth and legend, longing for a past that might have been. Her story was a bridge between the shattered past and the yearning for hope. The world's fascination. As the years unfolded, the tale of the lost princess captured hearts across the globe. It became a story told in hushed tones and hopeful whispers, a dream that danced on the edge of reality. Books were written, detailing the last days of the Romanovs, the tragedy of a fallen empire, and the possibility of survival. Plays and films brought Anastasia's story to life, painting her as a symbol of innocence and resilience. Children fell asleep dreaming of a princess who escaped the darkness. Adults pondered the fragility of fate. The idea of a missing princess was a balm to a world healing from war and loss. Her name was sung in theaters, spoken in classrooms, and murmured in cozy living rooms as night fell. This fascination was not just about a person, but about hope, about the possibility that even the darkest endings might hold a secret beginning. Science reveals the truth. With the passing of time, new light was cast upon the old shadows. In the quiet fields near Ekaterinburg, scientists uncovered a hidden grave. Careful hands and patient minds worked to piece together the past. Using the language of DNA, they spoke across generations. Tests confirmed the identities of the Romanovs. The shattered truth was revealed. The entire family had perished in that cold basement. Anna Anderson was not Anastasia, but a woman scarred by a different kind of loss. The revelation settled like a soft snowfall, both mournful and clarifying. While the fairy tale of survival was not true, the real story held a different kind of beauty, one of memory, of legacy, of the light left behind by a family extinguished too soon. Secret light. The story of Anastasia is not simply about a girl who might have escaped death. It is about the glow that lingers in the spaces between fact and legend. A light that flickers in stories told beside fires, in dreams held close in the quiet of night. Her name is a beacon for those who believe in hope beyond despair. In the depths of loss, a seed of light can still grow, and in the coldest shadows, warmth can find a way to bloom. Anastasia's legacy is a reminder that even when all seems lost, some light can never be extinguished. legends, and murmurs. Even after the cold truth of the Romanov family's fate was laid bare by history, the story of Anastasia continued to dance on the edges of imagination. Whispers told of secret escapes and hidden passages beneath the palace walls, where loyal servants might have spirited the young princess away from danger. Some said she wore the simple clothes of a servant, blending into the snowy streets under a cloak of night, escaping the terror behind her. Villagers far from the city spoke in hushed tones of a mysterious young woman with eyes full of sorrow and stories too strange to be false. Some legends tell of a shadowy protector, a figure cloaked in darkness who carried Anastasia away on horseback, disappearing into the forest's mist. Others believe she crossed oceans, finding refuge in lands unknown, living quietly in the shadows, far from crowns and palaces. These stories, though unproven, kept alive a fragile flame, a dream that the princess would not be swallowed by the darkness. The Anna Anderson Enigma. Anna Anderson appeared suddenly in the 1920s, a woman haunted by memories she barely understood, claiming to be Anastasia. She spoke with trembling certainty of secret family moments, childhood games, and whispered names. Her knowledge of the Romanov household was detailed and intimate. Tales of hidden markings on dolls, lullabies sung by the Tsarina, the scent of the winter palace gardens. For many, these details were proof enough, a fragile thread linking the broken past to a hopeful present. Her claim ignited fierce debate. Romanov relatives split between acceptance and rejection, historians puzzled and intrigued. Her life became a spectacle of tragedy and longing, a woman caught between truth and illusion. Despite DNA evidence decades later disproving her identity, Anna Anderson remains a symbol of the yearning for miracles, a living embodiment of hope against despair. Anastasia in art and memory. The tale of Anastasia has inspired countless artists, writers, and dreamers. Portraits capture her youthful innocence, soft brushstrokes immortalizing her gentle gaze and golden hair. Stories and poems weave themes of loss, resilience, and hope into her legend. The 1997 animated film reimagined her life as a magical journey of discovery. In that story, Anastasia is separated from her family, embarking on a quest to reclaim her identity and find belonging. The film's dreamy landscapes and haunting melodies soothe the heart, offering a tender fairy tale within the harsh folds of history. Across the world, museums safeguard her family's treasures. Letters, toys, and photographs whispering secrets from a vanished era. Her memory lives not just in facts, but in the dreams and hopes of generations. The Eternal Light. Anastasia's story transcends history, becoming a beacon in the human heart. It speaks of hope in the face of despair, light in the deepest darkness. Though she perished in truth, her spirit glows softly in stories told beneath the quiet stars. She reminds us that even when all seems lost, the smallest light can guide us forward. Her tale comforts those who dream of miracles, second chances, and the strength to survive. Anastasia is a whisper of resilience, a promise that some lights never fade. Princess Kaʻiolani of Hawaii, the last voice of a vanishing kingdom. Royal beginnings. Under the soft golden glow of a Hawaiian sunrise, in the year 1875, Princess Victoria Kaʻiolani was born into a world of beauty and uncertainty. Her arrival was met with joyous celebration throughout the islands. A child destined to carry the hopes of a proud people, she was the beloved daughter of Princess Miriam Likelike, a woman of grace and strength, and Archibald Scott Cleghorn, a Scotsman who embraced his new home with devotion. From the very beginning, Kaʻiolani's life was woven with the rich traditions of Hawaii. She learned the ancient chants and the sacred stories. Her days were filled with the scent of blooming plumeria, the warm caress of ocean breezes, and the songs of native birds that danced through the air. Her governesses and tutors taught her with gentle patience, blending royal etiquette with the wisdom of her ancestors. Yet beneath the beauty of the islands, shadows began to gather, as foreign powers eyed Hawaii's fertile lands and precious ports. Though the young princess played beneath swaying palms, the tides of change whispered through the warm winds. The princess and her people. Kaʻiolani's spirit was as bright as the sunlit waters that kissed Hawaii's shores. She was more than a princess. She was a daughter of the land and its people. She walked barefoot among the gardens, listening to the elders recount tales of Pele, the fiery goddess of the volcano, and of the sacred kapu that guarded the islands. Her laughter was like the gentle rush of a waterfall, drawing children and commoners alike into her light. She learned to speak Hawaiian fluently, understanding the nuances and melodies that carried the heart of her culture. The people adored her, seeing in her the promise of a future where tradition and change might coexist. Even as the kingdom's fate grew uncertain, Kaʻiolani held close the stories of her ancestors, a living bridge between the past and what might come. The kingdom in crisis. But beyond the paradise, dark clouds loomed. The kingdom's independence was fragile, threatened by the greed and ambition of foreign interests. American businessmen and settlers, backed by political power, sought to control Hawaii's sugar plantations and ports. Secret meetings and whispered plots filled the halls of power. A shadowy group prepared to overthrow the queen. Kaʻiolani was still a child, but the weight of her heritage pressed heavily on her tiny shoulders. Her mother and uncle, King Kalakaʻa's successor, fought tirelessly to defend the crown. but the forces against them were relentless and growing. The world around her was shifting, and the paradise she loved was slipping away. Kaiulani's voice. At the tender age of 12, Kaiulani was sent far from home, to England, a land of fog and stone castles, so unlike her island home. There, she was groomed to be a queen who could navigate the treacherous waters of international politics. She learned languages, history, and the delicate dance of diplomacy. But her heart ached for Hawaii, the sound of the ocean and the scent of plumeria ever in her memory. Kaiulani became an eloquent speaker and writer, using her voice to plead with foreign leaders to respect her people's right to self-rule. In London's grand halls, she spoke of Hawaii's beauty and sovereignty, a princess fighting for a kingdom she might never fully return to. Her efforts were courageous but often ignored. The tides of power favored those who sought to claim her islands. Still, Kaiulani held on to hope, a quiet strength fueled by love and a fierce sense of duty. The weight of heritage. Kaiulani carried the heavy burden of her lineage with a quiet, steady grace. Though still a young woman, she sensed the fragile future that awaited her people. The rich traditions she cherished seemed to slip through her fingers like the soft sands of her island shores. Often, she would sit alone by a window, gazing out toward the endless horizon where the ocean met the sky. In those moments, she longed for a Hawaii untouched by foreign ambitions, a place where the songs of her ancestors still echoed freely. The royal robe she wore felt like a cloak of duty and expectation, too heavy for her slender frame, yet she bore it with dignity. Her heart blazed quietly, kindled by the stories of her ancestors' courage, of kings and queens who had ruled with wisdom and strength. In secret, she wrote letters filled with hope and sorrow, pleas to distant rulers and allies, begging for justice and recognition for her beloved homeland. Hawaii's lost crown. The year 1893 brought with it a shattering blow. The overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani. The monarchy that had ruled for generations was ripped apart by political schemes and the greed of powerful outsiders. Kaiulani's dreams of a sovereign Hawaii began to crumble like ancient stone under relentless waves. The crown she was destined to inherit was stolen, taken away by those who cared little for the island's people or their heritage. Across the islands, the people's cries of loss and betrayal echoed like mournful chants beneath the palms. Though she was far from home, the pain of exile clung to her like a second skin, a princess without a kingdom to call her own. The grand halls and cold stone of her English education felt distant and foreign compared to the warm earth and fragrant blossoms of Hawaii. A life in exile. Kaiulani's days were spent far from the emerald valleys and shimmering seas of her youth. She traveled through the great cities of Europe, attending salons and social gatherings, meeting diplomats and nobility. But her heart remained tethered to the islands she loved. Letters from loyal supporters reached her often, stories of quiet resistance and the unbroken spirit of her people. She dreamed endlessly of returning, of reclaiming her place as a symbol of hope and dignity for Hawaii. Yet the relentless tide of history moved forward, indifferent to her prayers. Tragic endings. In 1899, just days before what would have been her 24th birthday, Kaiulani's life was suddenly cut short. A swift illness claimed her, a fragile flame extinguished too soon. Across Hawaii, the news spread like a soft, sorrowful breeze. The islands mourned their lost princess deeply. Whispers began to swirl among her people, tales of her spirit lingering in the gentle island winds, watching over the valleys and shores she loved so dearly. Her legacy lived on, not in crowns or thrones, but in the hearts and memories of those who carried the stories of Hawaii's last royal voice. A nation's mourning. Kaiulani's death cast a long shadow across the Hawaiian Islands. Flags were lowered, homes were draped in black, and solemn chants rose like incense through the hills of Nuuanu Valley. Her funeral procession passed through the streets of Honolulu, lined with mourners who stood silently, their tears falling like warm rain. Women wore leis of white ginger and mail, ancient symbols of grief and honor. Children laid blossoms at her resting place, their small hands trembling as they whispered her name. It was not just the death of a princess, but the death of a dream, the hope of a sovereign Hawaii, with a queen who understood both the native soul and the foreign tongue, faded with her last breath. A spirit in the wind. Even after her passing, many claimed that Kaiulani had never truly left. Fishermen, drifting beneath the starlit sea, spoke of hearing soft humming carried on the trade winds. Old aunties swore they'd seen her walking through the garden of Inaha, her childhood home, pale and glowing in the moonlight. Some said she appeared to lost travelers near her old estate, guiding them gently back to safety. Others believed the island birds changed their songs when they flew past her grave. They called her Ka Leo Nalawale, the lost voice, and yet her presence was felt everywhere. In the fragrance of plumeria at dusk, in the lull of the waves on Waikiki's shore, in the hush between the palms at twilight. The legacy of a princess. Though her crown was never restored, Kaiulani's legacy endured in other ways. She became a symbol of identity and resilience, especially for the Hawaiian people as they faced the tides of American annexation and cultural erasure. Her name was spoken in classrooms, painted in murals, woven into hula chants and remembered in song. Young girls grew up hearing her story, not as a tale of defeat, but of a woman who loved her land with her whole heart. She was the princess who refused to forget where she came from, the girl who stood in marble parlors and pleaded for justice with the soul of a queen, the woman who, though denied a throne, still ruled in memory. The echoes of Kaiulani. Even today, more than a century later, her story continues to echo across oceans and generations. Visitors to Hawaii still speak her name softly as they walk through old gardens. They pause at the small stone that marks her resting place, leaving fresh leis and whispered prayers. Some say that on quiet evenings, if you listen closely, you might hear the faint rustle of silk across the grass, or a whisper in the wind, not in English, not in Hawaiian, but in the language of memory, a reminder of a time when Hawaii still dreamed its own dreams, and a young woman stood between two worlds, refusing to let go of either. The Legends in the Rain. Long after her death, the story of Princess Kaiulani drifted from the pages of history into the realm of legend. Among the older generation in Hawaii, it is said that the rain that falls on Waikiki in the late afternoon, brief and delicate, is Kaiulani's rain. They say it is her spirit returning, touching the land she loved with the gentlest of farewells. Locals call it Ka-Ue Puekia, the rain of Puekia, soft, cool, and scented with flowers. It falls often around her former home in Inaho, and the elders believe it is a sign that she is still watching. Some storytellers whisper that Kaiulani didn't die from illness at all, that she was poisoned by political forces who feared her return, that she had grown too strong, too beloved, too symbolic of a nation that still resisted being forgotten. Others tell tales of dreams in which she appears, draped in white and wreathed in hibiscus, speaking no words, only watching with eyes full of sorrow. A few have claimed to see her riding a white horse along the beaches of Hilo at dawn, just as she once did as a child, her hair flying in the wind, her laughter echoing across the shore. They say she rides only when something is coming, something that will stir the islands. And so, her presence lingers, not in ghost stories, but in the hush of banyan trees, the curve of the surf, the way the light hits the sea just before twilight. Kaiulani became more than a princess. She became a legend stitched into the very soul of the islands, a voice that was never truly lost, just quieter now, like the breeze through palm leaves, like the sigh of the earth as it remembers her. Empress Elisabeth of Austria, the star-crowned ghost of the Alps. The wild rose of Bavaria. Before she was an empress, before the grand halls and cold crowns, she was simply Cece, a spirited girl born into the house of Wittelsbach, with leaves in her hair and poetry on her lips. Born on Christmas Eve, 1837, in the gentle town of Possenhofen on Lake Starnberg, she was the daughter of Duke Maximilian of Bavaria and Princess Ludovica. But unlike the other daughters of European nobility, Cece was not raised to sit still. She rode horses bareback through the fields, fed deer with her bare hands, sang old songs by moonlight. They called her wild, but not unkindly, like the wild roses that bloomed along the lakeside each spring. Free, delicate, stubborn, beautiful. No one imagined she would be an empress, not even she. A crown by accident. In 1853, when Sisi was just 15, her older sister Helene was chosen to marry the young Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria. A marriage of duty, of arrangement, but fate, or perhaps whim, turned its eye on Sisi instead. The emperor met the younger sister and fell instantly under her spell. Her shyness, her natural grace, the sorrow behind her eyes, it all seemed to enchant him. And so the plans changed, and the quiet girl who preferred meadows to mirrors was to become Empress of Austria. At 16, she was married in Vienna. The crowds cheered, the bells rang, but deep within her, Sisi trembled, not from fear, but from knowing that she was no longer her own. A cage of gold. The Habsburg court was cold and glittering. Every gesture was governed, every word measured. Sisi, so used to freedom and open skies, found herself trapped, watched by the ever-present eye of the imperial household, whispered about by courtiers, judged by her husband's mother, the iron-willed Archduchess Sophie. Even her children were taken from her arms, raised by others in accordance with royal protocol. She grew silent, began to wither beneath the weight of silks and protocol, and so she sought escape, in silence, in solitude, in exile. She began to disappear into shadows, slipping away from the palace whenever she could, riding through forests at dawn, taking long voyages, hiding behind veils and pseudonyms. The Empress was becoming a ghost in her own lifetime. Mirror and myth. Sisi's beauty became legend across Europe. Long chestnut hair that reached past her knees, a waist no wider than a wasp's skin untouched by the sun. But it was no accident. She endured punishing routines, 4-hour hairdressings, vinegar diets, tight-laced corsets, and daily weigh-ins. Her reflection became both sanctuary and prison. She feared aging more than death, not out of vanity, but because beauty was the one power left to her, a way to remain untouchable, a way to defy a world that had tried to mold her. But even as she preserved her body, her spirit drifted further from Vienna. She became a wanderer, drawn to Hungary, Greece, England, and the sea. She learned languages, read deeply, wrote poetry that no one saw. She was a crowned woman, but never a rooted one. Whispers in the corridors. Over time, her absences grew longer, her presence more elusive. Courtiers called her eccentric, melancholic, mad, even. She wore black for decades, after the suicide of her only son, Crown Prince Rudolph. His death broke her in a way no crown ever could mend. She withdrew even further, refused to be photographed, moved through cities under false names. She traveled with just a single companion, often sleeping in small inns rather than palaces, and always, always veiled. Some said she was searching for death. Others believed she had already become part of legend, like a queen from an old ballad who had passed into mist and story. They called her the Shadow Empress. A sun lost to shadows. In the cold of January 1889, a silence deeper than snow fell upon the Habsburg court. Crown Prince Rudolph, her only son, her hope in a world that had often left her cold, was found dead at Mayerling. The official report called it a suicide pact with his young lover, Baroness Mary Vetsera. But no one truly knows what happened in that hunting lodge. Only that 2 young lives were extinguished, and one mother's soul was shattered. Cece, who had drifted before, now began to vanish entirely. She wore mourning black from that day onward. She refused to speak of Rudolph again, not because she didn't grieve, but because the pain was too vast, too deep for language. Some say she never smiled again, not with her eyes, not truly. She had been a ghost in life before. Now she was a ghost in mourning. The Empress disappears. For the remaining years of her life, Empress Elisabeth was rarely seen. Not in Vienna, not in court, not even among her grandchildren. She traveled endlessly, always fleeing, always chasing silence. From the waters of the Mediterranean to the cliffs of Madeira, from Egypt to Corfu to the forests of Bavaria, she went where the wind would not follow, where no one would call her majesty. She walked alone, always veiled, always distant. She no longer permitted official portraits. She evaded photographers. To the public, she became myth. Some believed she had gone mad, others that she had died and been replaced. But in truth, she had simply left, not the world, but the weight of it. A heart still beating, somewhere, yet in her endless drifting, there was still a rhythm in her life. She wrote poetry under the name Titania, Queen of Fairies, lost among the leaves. She studied philosophy, dined on oranges and milk, refused meat. She read Homer in ancient Greek. She took long walks, often for hours, always flanked by guards she barely acknowledged. But she still noticed the small things, clouds gathering above a ruined monastery, the cry of a gull above a harbor, and she still loved deeply, if quietly, her youngest daughter Valerie, the sea, the smell of lavender. She had become a soul that hovered, neither of the palace nor quite of the earth. Some say she saw her own death coming, that she wrote of it, dreamed of it, and welcomed it like a lover long delayed. A Blade in Geneva. On September 10, 1898, in the city of Geneva, Elisabeth walked beside her lady-in-waiting along the lake. The sky was calm, the wind soft. She was wearing black, as always, and her veil fluttered lightly in the breeze. A man approached, an Italian anarchist named Luigi Lucchini, with a thin, sharpened file hidden in his sleeve. He struck once, a single blow to her chest, so swift, so precise, she did not realize she had been stabbed. She walked for several steps before collapsing. Her corset had held her upright, but her heart had been pierced. She died shortly after, not with screams, but in quiet, as though the world itself whispered her away. In her pocket, they found a small vial of lavender oil and a poem folded in 4. The Funeral of a Phantom. The Empress was laid to rest in the Capuchin crypt in Vienna, beneath marble and wreaths, beside rulers and husbands. But some said it was not truly her in the coffin. She had wandered too far, hidden herself too well. How could a woman who lived like mist be caught by something so final as death? In the weeks that followed, poems were published in small corners of Europe, unsigned, in her own style. Some claimed to see her on ships departing Naples at dusk. Others whispered of a veiled woman riding alone through Bavarian forests. Always silent, always shadowed. The funeral was grand, but her spirit was nowhere to be found. As if Elisabeth had slipped past the veil and into story, not soil. The Lake That Remembers. In Possenhofen, the lake of her childhood remains still and cold. Locals say the wind changes when her name is spoken aloud near the water. There is a bench beneath an old linden tree, where women sometimes sit alone and weep, not knowing why. Children claim to hear a lullaby on foggy mornings, one not found in any book. And in summer, when the moon is high, a white figure has been seen walking barefoot along the shore. She leaves no footprints, just the scent of lavender and the faint sound of silk brushing reeds. Fishermen do not call to her. They know better. They let her walk in silence, back toward the trees, where no living soul follows. The Star-Crowned Ghost. Throughout Europe, in the grand palaces turned into museums, she is everywhere and nowhere. A dress behind glass in Vienna, a portrait in Budapest, a lock of her hair kept like relic. Yet none of these hold her spirit. It is in the things that move, the wind through an empty hall, a mirror that reflects no one for a moment too long. In one of her favorite hotels in Switzerland, guests have reported soft knocking on their doors in the night. When opened, no one is there, but a trail of wet footprints leads down the hall. At the Achilleon Palace in Corfu, her retreat by the sea, staff once heard a woman crying behind locked doors. They broke in, only to find the room empty, and her favorite poem carved delicately into the window glass with a hairpin. They say she wanders not to haunt, but to avoid being forgotten, to slip through the lives of those who, like her, have felt trapped or lost or longing for air. Legends that do not die. Some say Elisabeth's ghost only appears to those who are grieving. A young widow who claimed she awoke to find a pale woman braiding her hair, whispering "You will go on," before vanishing like breath on glass. A poet in Budapest who insisted a veiled figure handed him a folded poem one rainy night. He published it under his own name, but later confessed it was not his. In Vienna, older women still light candles on the anniversary of her death and tell their granddaughters, "Be wild and silent and free like Cece." there are even stranger tales of a woman in modern clothes and antique boots who appears in old train stations and whispers warnings before disasters, of dreams that end with a glimpse of a star-shaped hairpin lying in the grass, of horses startled in alpine fields, rearing at nothing, then calming as if someone whispered their name. No one knows if Empress Elisabeth truly haunts these places, or if the sorrow she carried left its own kind of echo, a wound in time that never quite healed, a shadow on the edge of mirrors, a story written in wind and silence, a star-crowned ghost who walks not to scare, but to remember, and to be remembered.